Here we go, Tiffy. Hit it.
Hello. Oh.
Oh,
I'm
wow.
B.
That was so much more active than last time.
I know.
I love it. Well, welcome to the Mind Body Energy Project. Hopefully that gives you a little sample of what this show is like.
I don't even know what it's like. I don't even know what happened. That one
Yeah.
caught me off guard. But I think that's what we're supposed to do, right?
Yeah.
Catch me off guard. Well, it worked.
Well, if you aren't new to us, this should seem very normal to you. But if you are new to the show, welcome. Here we are. I'm Yolanda.
Yep.
That's Tiffany.
I'm Tiffany. Yep.
And we are currently doing a tarot journey, which is almost done. So we're halfway through the Suit of Swords. And after this, we have the Suit of Pentacles. And then it's a wrap. And we will go back to our regularly scheduled programming. Tongue twisting
I've missed
myself.
it. I've
have
enjoyed
I.
the tarot journey, but I miss our regular rabbit holes.
Yeah, me too. I really do.
Yeah.
So I am glad that we did this because it's like fun going deeper into connection with the cards and how we translate them and all of these things. Actually, we had a meeting. We have once a month where we meet with our Mind Body Energy Project insiders, where we have a live event with them behind the scenes. And in the most recent one, we were told someone translated one of the cards.
Three of Swords?
No, yes, it was the Three of Swords. They shared with us their translation, and they pointed out that the storm was behind the heart. So the storm being behind you. So I say that to say we love to hear your interpretations and what comes up for you as we go through this journey. So please share with us. We would love to hear it. And all of these different insights just helps all of us go deeper into the cards.
Yeah, because based on all our own personal experiences, as we talk about on the Mind Body Energy Project, which I think is a pervasive theme, is that we talk about the lenses that we wear, because everything is about perspective. So our lenses are created by our experiences, which means our perspectives are created by our experiences, and everybody has different experiences, which is why it's great to share that and to be open-minded, because then it grows our perspective.
Yeah. And, I always say too, we learn and grow and exchange. And I believe that wholeheartedly. I mean, there's like nothing better for me when you have those like little aha moments because someone shares with you their point of view and you're like, man, I never thought of that. Or, oh, I never saw it that way. So yeah, share with us on Facebook at MBE Project, or you can, that's really the best place. Like, let's be honest.
Yeah, it is. It's true.
Facebook is the best place to share with us. But if you want to access like more content from us or have that opportunity to connect with us behind the scenes once a month, you can become an MBE insider. Just go to patreon.com/MBE project.
You got lots of goodies on there.
Yeah. Speaking of which, we did our energy of the month in hello August, hello Leo season.
Yep.
I've got my Leo mane going.
It's true. Mine will be there as soon as my hair dries.
So last week we were talking about the Suit of Swords and how a lot of people have an aversion to them. And I liked that we talked about the benefit, obviously, at looking at the workings of our own minds and like having consideration of how we think and how it impacts us. But I was thinking about for these three cards that we're doing today, Swords 5 through 7, it's interesting when you look at the different characters of the card, is because the different characters in any given card, they speak to different aspects of what the messaging could be. So for example, really quickly, like one that's coming to mind is the Death card. And so there's, death riding in on a horse, but there's 3 people down on the ground and they're all doing something differently with their interaction of death, right? So the different characters in the card can also lend to how we're interpreting reading to reading, situation to situation. But on this suit specifically, also looking at the positioning of the swords, I thought is very interesting. So
yeah, that's a good point.
Yeah. Shall we play?
Yeah.
Everybody grab your cards.
Mm-hmm.
Swords 5 through 7.
So like that you talked about the positioning of the swords, because in 5, it shows that there's one guy's holding 3 swords and there's 2 swords on the ground and 2 people walking away. So there's so much in here. But we've talked about this before, the term laying down your sword.
Mm-hmm.
So we could see either victory in this card of a man who is in a battle and he's collected some swords and he's won and he's caused those other people to walk away in defeat. Or we could say, you know, like this person who's standing there with the swords, he's kind of like devious and has a snide look on his face, you know, where the other people are like, I'm not dealing with this anymore. They laid down their swords and walked away.
Yeah, and that's the thing of this card. That's very interesting. It's not just about winning, but it's like winning through deceit, or, you know, sometimes we are driven to do something by any means necessary, even if it's not necessarily honest or right, I guess you would say. So yeah, like if you're connecting more with the energy of the person at the foreground, he did win, but it wasn't necessarily an honest win. Whereas the people in the background, that energy is more like there was some sort of defeat. And I think we've all, you know, been at the hand of a circumstance where we feel like it wasn't in our favor, but it felt unfair to us, you know, and that's more of the people in the background. But then, you know, have you ever acted in a way or done something to win, even if you are like playing or fighting dirty? I mean, also that's true. A lot of people have done that as well. So yeah, the 5 of Swords, somebody's going to win, somebody's going to lose, but the tactics weren't necessarily that great. And it usually has to do with some form of betrayal.
Yeah. And I like how you say that, how they win. And if we're talking about perspective, we may have felt we were treated unjustly because of the way somebody went about accomplishing something or quote unquote winning. And we may see it as dirty, but and we may have taken a loss or have resentment for it, whatever emotion we come up with that's negative. If we could expand our perspective and step into their shoes and think maybe what we deem or judge as wrong or incorrect, they perceive it as correct. So in order for us to kind of like shake away our loss or whatever grief feelings that we feel, being able to step in and see what their perspective, because they might actually truly think that something was just, even though we think and it seems pretty black and white, it might not be.
Yeah, I think what comes up for me around that is like when people are underhanded, right? I mean, like it's the whole thing of, it's not necessarily that you have to agree with them or say like, yes, like, you know, I can understand in a way of, again, like agreeing with them or saying it was okay, as much as sometimes like seeing from a higher perspective allows us to understand for nothing less than compassion. So it reminds me of, I saw this thing on Facebook not that long ago, and it was a true story. This man owned a convenience store, and he had cameras in the store. And this young boy came in, he was like a teenager, and he was walking through the store and stuffing his pockets with like snacks and candies and this type of thing. And so the store owner stopped the boy and was like, I'm calling the police, like, you know, blah, blah, blah. Why are you stealing from my store? And the boy said, because I'm hungry and my little brother is hungry and I want to get food for my little brother. So the store owner hung up the phone. And while this boy was doing something deceitful or, you know, stealing from this man, once the man understood the why, he then told the boy to put all the snacks away and gave the boy food, gave him like the chicken or pizza or whatever, like real food was at the convenience store. And then also told the boy, don't ever go about it this way again, you know? So what you're saying reminds me very much of that story. A lot of times we don't understand why people are acting from an underhanded way, but it also shows that when we can step into compassion and have understanding, there may be a way for both sides to win, so to speak, and it doesn't have to be deceitful.
Yeah. And as you're saying that, the word right before you said it, compassion, came to my mind too. So I'm glad that you said it.
Yeah.
But as we're talking about compassion in an instance like this, I think that there's a lot of ways we can identify with the feeling that's in this picture of the Five of Swords. And a lot of times we come into conflict and we think that somebody's acting underhanded and we're like, forget it, and we just walk away. Whereas if we did step into compassion, what could we have salvaged from that relationship? And this card is actually, it's associated with Venus, which is the planet of relationships. So I think it's a good card to kind of reflect back on how are we perceiving feelings in a relationship and conflict.
And if you're the one who is tempted to be deceitful, like really checking with yourself and seeing like why, why do you feel like you have to go about this in a manipulative way or in an underhanded way? And is there an opportunity to be maybe more honest, more direct? Is there another approach to find solution? That could be a good thing too, because sometimes it's us. It's not always, the other person.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, Five of Swords. A lot of
This
good
is the Five of Swords
there.
and the Chakra Tarot. When I look at this one, it just it makes me think of temptation just because they're all so good looking in the way
wow.
Right? Like
Yeah,
he's like, I might cheat, or somebody did cheat, and
No, it reminds me of Labyrinth, the movie.
Ooh, yeah, that's such a good movie.
So we have the Six of Swords. And one thing about this, I like, especially with, again, looking at the positioning of the swords and the characters, you have this person on a boat and they are paddling to people. So this card is representative of like a transition after hardship, but it also can represent support in the process. Like things are slowly getting better. And I like that the swords are all upright in front of them and there's smooth water ahead, but there's also this person in position of supporting them that's helping them move forward. So I think it's a good reminder of, even if we're in like a hard time, a hard place, knowing that things will change. And sometimes maybe it's a matter of allowing ourselves to be supported to move forward, because we can't always do it alone.
Yeah. My favorite thing about this card is the water, that it's wavy and rough on one side of the boat, and then on the other side it's smooth. So it's saying like, yeah, you're actually leaving that conflict behind and moving forward. And I like that point that somebody's actually supporting and doing the work.
Yeah.
I think that's a really good reminder that a lot of times I think when we're in conflict, we feel very alone and we feel very isolated. So to be reminded that there's support out there, and even if it's not a network of people, that you have the support of going into meditation and feeling that connection of, your life force energy on this planet.
Well, because we always look at the cards like in sequence, it also reminds me of the story again with the man on the Facebook story that I saw. He supported this person that came in and was going to do something that would, be disruptive to his business. What it's making me think of is like a lot of times we have an opportunity to support other people who may be in challenging situations. And I think it's common and often easy for us to look at other people who are struggling or having a hard time and fall into judgment and like, oh, why don't they just do X, Y, Z? Or why don't they see like blah, blah, blah? And instead of doing all of that, like what can we do to be of support? And maybe if we're not like necessarily helping them in a tangible way, sometimes we can just like point people in the right direction. And it is healing for us in a lot of ways, sometimes when we're even in our own stuckness or upset, to turn around and see how we can be of service to others. So then it's kind of like a win-win. We can both move forward by creating an opportunity of support.
Yeah, and it's the Six of Swords. So 6 is the number of harmony. So thinking about how do we create harmony from the conflict.
It's interesting that in both of these cards there are, again, like multiple characters. So it lends to these different pursuits of the mind and what we choose to do, and but as it may involve other people. Because as we move on to the seven of swords, this little character, He's acting alone. And again, I mean, the thing with this card is it's like, what are those times where you may be, or someone else is acting in a way that may be like sneaky or cunning or like just a little bit slick. There might be a hidden agenda. And with the positioning of the swords here, it reminds me of the 2 swords are in the background, stuck in the ground, but they're behind him. And then he's carrying off the other 5. That in of itself reminds me of like, you've left your integrity behind you. Like you have fallen far away from being in like your right mind. But again, it makes me ask like, why? Like what's really going on here?
Mm-hmm.
What do you think of this card?
At first when I see it, I do think of theft and deceit and somebody taking from us. But what the 2 behind him remind me of is that they can't take everything from you.
Mm-hmm.
And just as you were talking about those 2, I started to think about the 2 of Wands, which is the making plans. So
Mm-hmm.
kind of seeing like this portal of what you have to work with and how are you going to move through that. So even though like this stuff may be going on and somebody may have done you wrong, they haven't taken everything from you and they never can. So you can always still pivot and make a different choice in a different direction to go in without
Yeah.
this action in the front that's going on, without that impeding it in any way.
And it makes me think of too, when there is like, sometimes we have just a feeling that there is a hidden agenda or someone isn't being totally transparent with us or completely honest with us. It also gives that opportunity again to check our own mind. Like, how are we going to handle that? How do you deal with it when you feel like something is going on that just feels a little off, like a little slick, somebody's being slick? How do you deal with that? And again, are you ever that person? Like, where are you in your life ever feeling like, oh, you're being a little cunning, or why? I think what it brings to mind for me, this card and the 5 of swords, is that I think oftentimes people do things that are like sneaky or underhanded or deceitful, a lot of times because they're afraid of something. You know what I mean? Like, what is it that you are afraid of that would cause you to not just be more upfront or more direct?
Yeah, that's a good point. I also like in this card, the option of focus. Like, do you want to focus on this or do you want to focus on what you still have in the background?
Focus on what?
Like, am I going to focus on this person who's done me wrong because of whatever their issues are or whatever is going on in their life? Or am I going to put my focus into what I have and what I can create with my life? You know, sometimes I think
Yeah.
we tend to get caught up in that, like, oh, this person did me wrong, da da da. And we can get so consumed by it that we forget to be in gratitude of everything else we have. And then we're giving that person our energy.
Yeah. The reason I asked you that way is because at a lot of times, especially with what we're talking about with the tarot, like we often forget that like not everybody watches us on YouTube. So for
Yeah.
everyone listening on the podcast, like just so they know, because they don't see like what we're holding up and pointing to. But yeah, I mean, these cards, they are very interesting. And I think if anything, what stands out to me in the 3 of them is kind of like our responsibility and choice that we have in all of these interactions, whether we're the ones that are doing something or we're the ones on the receiving end, we still always have choice in how we navigate it, whatever it may be. And then, of course, with the 6, I like that it highlights, support.
Yeah.
And sometimes it's hard to even admit that we need support. You know what I mean? And then it makes me think that a lot of people reach a breaking point until they allow support to happen or to come in. And then when it does, like, it just is like smooth sailing, so to speak. You want to go with the card.
Yeah.
But yeah, like even have some consideration of like where in your life perhaps you can be more honest or have more transparency with people or situations, but also where you can either be of support or could benefit from being supported.
Yeah, I think these 3 cards really offer so many different dynamic roles to play, either in yourself of having the choice or viewing what somebody else may be going through and how you can kind of spin how to be a support or how to view what feelings you get from what experience they're going through.
Yeah. I also like, what does your Six of Swords look like?
This one?
Let's see. Yeah, it's visible too. What's standing out to me right now, looking at it again, is the positioning of his feet on those planks inside of the boat where people sit on those planks. It's reminding me of like one foot in front of the other. Like, you know, sometimes when we're feeling stuck in those times where we need help coming out of a tough time, like one foot in front of the other. But also that gap in between reminds me of another deck that I have it's like overcoming the obstacle, right? Like his feet are both stabilized and there's that hole there, but knowing that we can overcome the obstacle.
That's a good insight.
Good luck with that, everybody. Yeah. So again, like what we were saying at the beginning, we would love to know, like, what do you see in these cards? If you're using the Rider-Waite-Smith deck as well, like, let us know how these images are what they're saying to you. On the other hand, though, if you're using a different deck, like, still share those insights too. As you can see, Tiffany shows pictures of a chakra tarot deck that she likes. If there's another deck and it has different imagery that speaks or translates these messages differently, we would love to know. So
I want to point one more thing out in the 7. This guy's doing something devious, or so we think, in the front of the 6 of Swords, where he's stealing the swords. But in the background,
7.
He's leaving the party. Oh yeah, sorry, 7. He's leaving the party. Those look like there's like fun circus tents back there, and everybody's here having a grand old time while he's doing this devious thing by himself. Who's having more fun?
Oh, you're funny. That's so funny. Who's having more fun? He's the one missing out. Yeah, and sometimes that too, oh God, here we go. But that reminds me of too, where sometimes when we don't feel a part of, or we don't feel like, you know, a lot of times where people feel like not accepted or a part of, they may act out. You know what I mean?
Yes.
Instead of just sharing like whatever may be coming up for them, and maybe finding out that their point of view wasn't necessarily true. It was a story they made up in their head. So yeah,
that's
it's
the truth.
Interesting how we have a tendency to act out based on stories we made up and then create an issue that wasn't even necessary. Oh man, being human.
Hardest thing I've ever done. It's true.
That is so funny. So next week when we talk about the cards, we will be going into the court cards of...
No, next week.
Oh, no, wait. That's right. 8, 9, 10. Dang it. I'm like really pushing it ahead. Okay. Next week we have swords 8, 9, and 10. And
that's right,
then we go into the court cards the following week. But like we mentioned to you before, especially if you're someone that's really going into this study, you know, take some time this week just to focus on these 3. Like, I personally like to meditate on a card. And then I like to write down, like, if this card was talking to me, what would the message be? And I just let myself do automatic writing. What do you like to do in terms of, like, when you're studying? I know you create spreadsheets, but is there anything else?
I like to see patterns. So right now I'm looking at my spreadsheet, and I'm looking at which cards are ruled by which planets, because that gives me more insight to what's going on in the card. So now I'm thinking about laying all my cards out and seeing which ones are all ruled by Mars and how they align and what messages are coming through or what patterns happen through there. So I like to take themes and then line the cards up by themes and then kind of like get a better understanding through themes and patterns.
Yeah, you saying it that way, I think what I love too is the story. So like I will sometimes lay out a suit and like look at what's the story of the suit. Like, is there a progression of like the story going front to back or back to front? Either way, I just like to see like how the cards interact with each other, right? Because I think they also breathe like life into each other. Like if you go from one to the next, the story expands and it just deepens the picture. We can paint. Yeah. Do you ever feel like yee when you pull a sword, like if you're doing a reading for yourself or anyone else, or are you pretty like comfortable with them all now?
No, I mean, I'm comfortable with them all,
Mm-hmm.
but I still, like, if a card comes up that I'm like, oh God, why? But I recognize what I do. I recognize what my initial story is that I've created with it. And then I get deeper into it. I'm like, well, what is it trying to actually tell me? Because I
Right.
know, even though my fear will tell me one thing, what I know to be true is that everything's always going to be all right no matter what. But
Mm-hmm.
fear makes you forget about that truth.
Yeah.
So I spend a little time with it and I work it out and say, okay, like, why did this make me nervous? What don't I want to hear? And why is this something I don't want to hear? And then work it out through there.
You know, the swords and what you just said, it reminds me of like the temptation of the mind. And we actually talked about this like a year ago. I don't remember which episode. I think we're talking about the ego and the higher self, but
Mm-hmm.
we're talking about the image of like the angel and the devil on your shoulder.
Mm-hmm.
And like there's a higher aspect of you that is encouraging you to do like the right thing, so to speak.
Mm-hmm.
And then that other aspect of us that's just like, come on, just go ahead. Like, just talking crap to you that is tempting you to do maybe something that is more underhanded or dishonest or whatever it may be. But it's interesting that we have this inner dichotomy that we're constantly trying to navigate. And it's like the more attention we give to our minds and the more attention we give to putting forth effort to go more in the way of like our higher mind, the less that tug of war is
Mm-hmm.
a struggle. I mean, it still may be present, but it's less of a challenge. Like the more and more you intentionally direct your mind in ways that are just more supportive.
Yeah, and I think that's growing up. Because as when we're kids, that's where that voice comes from, is things that we've endured as we were kids. And
I
then we
know some
take it with
adults
us.
that are still like,
Yeah.
honey, woo.
Well, and that's why we think our experiences that we may see as triggering or traumatic, they triggered those stories that were created when we were younger that were necessary then, but no longer serve us. So this dissonance and this constant tug of war that we experience now with it is growing out of that story that no longer fits us, but it's uncomfortable.
Yeah,
Because
but I
growth
mean,
is
that's like
uncomfortable.
the point of the Mind Body Energy Project, right? Is like
Mm-hmm.
really looking at these different aspects of like who we are and how we function, but highlighting in all of that, like the responsibility we have to who we are being and how we are functioning, and
That's right.
always recognizing that we have choice. And that's the thing, like we all have stories. We all have past experiences that have scarred us, that have hurt us, that have made us distrustful, that have
Mm-hmm.
made us guarded, all of these things. And while we have all had these experiences in varying degrees, granted, but there are people that even have experiences that are identical, but still may respond to or come out on the other side differently. And a
Mm-hmm.
lot of that is attributed to that choice of self-recognition and like, what am I going to do with my mind and how I'm
Right.
perceiving and like how I'm directing my life force.
And
Yeah.
that's what we
So
call the work.
yeah, that's,
Doing
yeah,
the work.
doing the work. And that's why, again, like looping back, I know we talked about this one of these episodes, but that's the cool thing about the tarot, right? Because it highlights for us different aspects of the work and what many of us need to work on.
Mm-hmm.
Like it's great to have these considerations because again, like it highlights our choice and it's work, but we could do it. And you're
And
probably
it's worth it.
here
And it's
listening
worth
to the
it.
podcast because you're
Yep.
doing the work.
Yep. And if you would rather not do the work, it's too late, because if you're already finding yourself having to do it, or having like some sort of inclination to examine what all this stuff is about, like you're already in it and there's no getting out now. So you may as well just keep doing the work. Because I've tried. I'm like, where's this ticket to book it back out? Like, where's my return ticket? There's no return ticket.
No,
So just keep
no,
going through it.
you can't become unaware of what
Yeah.
you become aware. Yeah, and that's the truth. It makes me think of two
I
or
mean, you
people.
could. I think they're called lobotomies, but they
Oh
don't do
no,
those
no, no, no,
anymore,
no.
right? They don't do
It
those
makes
anymore.
no, thank goodness. But it makes me think. Oh, that reminds me too of that movie. What was it called? It had Jim Carrey. It was like something
Bruce
about
Almighty.
happiness. No.
Oh, the Eternal Sunshine of the Spotless Mind.
Yes, Internal Sunshine of the Spotless Mind. Yes,
I
yeah,
gotta
no,
watch that again.
we don't want to go in that direction, howsoever. And that's the thing too. It's like these things, these cards, even the ones that trigger us and the experiences in life that can be challenging, like they still, in the like best side of it that you can look at, is they give us opportunities to grow and to like really challenge ourselves to deal with our stuff, like whatever it may be, our emotions, our mind, our regret, our anger, our sadness, all of these things that really impact the flow of life for us.
Amen.
Yeah. How
I
are you
think that's a
feeling?
I think that's a good thing to end it with right there.
Okay.
That's
Well,
food
then
for
that's
thought
it
to
for
take into
today.
the week.
We'll see you all next week. Hopefully you will share your thoughts with us on Facebook, and we thank you for being here.
Hasta luego.
Goodbye.